Okay, it's Tuesday, January 7th, 2020, and I wanted to just do a quick little talk to post on iterations of zero. I'm not sure what to talk about exactly, but I want to try to at least get something up there every week. And what I did yesterday is really not going to be very interesting to anybody, not very useful. It's kind of dark. I may eventually add it, but it's sort of musings on depression and the fact that some things were getting better and then some things feel like they're backsliding and I get very stressed out and why not? What have I got not to be stressed out about? I know that sounds like a strange question, right? One would, if one approached things naively, imagine that not being stressed out would be the default state. So you wouldn't have to have something not to be stressed out about. But when you look at it closely, biology and natural selection, evolution, etc., to me seem to imply that being stressed out is the default state. I've mentioned this before, that I think that being stressed out, the various forms of quote-unquote suffering are what actually motivate action. We have to have some kind of biological reward, our dopamine, serotonin, endorphins, etc., to keep us coming back, as it were. The sense of satisfaction when we have done something. But that can't last for very long, because for creatures for whom that lasts very long, there will be quiescence, there will be complacency. They will not be as successful survivors, reproducers, as organisms that are driven to act more energetically, I guess would be the word. So, maybe this goes back to what I was talking about before, about how maybe depression is a clearer sense of insight. And maybe the Buddhists are right in the sense that life is suffering. Now, I don't think that you could say that in the sense of that is the definition of life, because that suffering is not an adequate description of what life is. But suffering is an inescapable part of any successful form of life. More inescapable than is pleasure. We can all pretty easily imagine life situations where for a long time there is little to no serious pleasure, except maybe the transient. Well, maybe I'm wrong about that, actually. Maybe if there were no pleasure of any kind, the pleasure of the rare or not so rare good meal, the pleasure of getting enough water, pleasure of sex, the pleasure of healthy exercise. If these were not present, it would imply an organism that basically is not getting what it needs. But certainly suffering must dominate. I know I brought this up not too long ago. You all know Harari's point about a squirrel that drew lasting and powerful joy from eating a nut would live a very satisfied and happy but short life. That wasn't really what I was thinking of talking about this morning, though. If anything, I sort of wanted to bring up something that's often troubling to me. A notion that I came up that I didn't come up with. I guess it came to me or developed yesterday, about comparing Oscar Wilde's description of fashion as being a form of ugliness so terrible that we have to change it every 6 months. And that really politics almost entirely is the same sort of thing. Politics is fashion, for the most part. Politics is... There are aspects of politics that are important, of course. That should... Well, maybe it doesn't go without saying, but it is true. There are things that we need to do, but there are things of quote-unquote fashion that are important too. Our clothes exist for a reason, and it's not just modesty. although that's part of it. But part of the reason humans have been able to live outside of sub-Saharan Africa is that we're able to do things like make clothes, invent clothing that protects us from the elements, keeps us warm, keeps us dry, etc. So there is real value to clothing, and in that sense to fashion, but many of the specifics of it are transitory and entirely arbitrary. So, similarly, much of politics, and particularly political correctness, is problematic that way. Certainly, it's important to have a system of laws, because the alternative is a law of the jungle, so to speak. Each person looking out for themselves and taking whatever they can, and it's not a stable strategy, or if it is, it's a stable strategy for a situation in which things are pretty terrible, and it will never outcompete the strategy of the Leviathan, people who have a system of laws, system of government, whatever it may be based on. And, we tweak it, we improve it, we always get better, but everybody gets so, in politics, treats their moment of politics as if it were the only important moment of politics, simply because it's happening to them. There's a narcissism and a solipsism in the way people approach politics. This issue that I think is important is the most important thing ever in the universe, and anyone who disagrees with me is evil. That's just the attitude. I don't think very many people probably literally would put it in those terms, but it is the attitude carried by it. And it's very counterproductive. It's actually very dangerous, because when people are convinced that they're right, they are far more dangerous than people who are convinced that they're doing willful evil. And here's why. A person doing willful evil, the person who's decided, you know what, screw it, I'm going to get what I can from this situation for myself and screw everybody else, I don't care. They will stop doing something when it becomes obvious that it is not profitable to them. When it becomes obvious that it's counterproductive, when it's causing them suffering, they will stop. Because the whole point of doing that willful evil is that they're trying to make themselves feel good or gain advantage, whatever their goal might be. It's a selfish goal, and it's a circumscribed goal, and they are at the center of it. Someone who's an idealist, someone who really believes that they're doing right, and that, even more dangerous, that they know what's right, will stop at nothing. There's nothing that can deter them if they're not open to argument. They will commit genocides, as political idealists from the Nazis to the communists to the French Revolution to the Inquisition have done throughout the ages. When you think you're doing right, your intention to do right gives you license, or makes you give yourself license to do evil in what you decide is the goal of achieving some good that you decide is so important. That's why the ethos of science, I think, should be expanded to everything. There should always be that provisionality. It's like, this is the best answer I've got right now, but I know implicitly and hopefully explicitly that it may be wrong in part, it may be completely wrong, and I will never know in what specific ways it's wrong until I discover something that is better, but I will never reach a point where I can say I have the final answer, because there is always more that can be learned, more that can be explained, and more that can be discovered. And that is in the realm of science, but it is also in the realm of politics and ethics, art, music, history. So I don't trust people who believe that they are right and are certain they are right. I think they're extremely dangerous. I don't mind people who think that they're right in a little small r, not capital R sense, say, yeah, I think I'm right. I think I'm right about a lot of things. I think we can all be pretty safely agreed that slavery is wrong. We can know that we're wrong about things. That's one thing. It's sort of like science. We can know that we're wrong once we've demonstrated something is wrong. Mathematically, that becomes obvious. We know by the axioms and rules of mathematics that 2 plus 2 does not equal 5, no matter what 1984 and Big Brother and with their tongue-in-cheek Radiohead say. And we know that phlogiston is not how heat works. We know also that the élan vital is not how life works. And with slightly less certainty, but nearly equal certainty, I can say, convinced that panpsychism is a vacuous idea. But I'm on shakier ground there, because we don't know as well about consciousness as we know about life. So, I could be proven wrong. I could be proven wrong about phlogiston, too. It's just really unlikely. This is one of the things I wish that I could take every person who thinks their politics and their ideas are so important and just grab their mind and confront it with the scope and scale of the universe and space and time and the possibilities of even greater scales of infinity. Force them to confront the infinity of real numbers between any two arbitrarily close points on a number line. Force them to confront the scale of reality and how small they are, and force them to deal with that, really get it into their bones, because then they can actually get more practical things done, ironically. The cosmic perspective on yourself, which is basically that you are very, very small. There is no cosmic level meaning, hitherto anyway, to your existence. Although David Deutsch's ideas about the beginning of infinity are perfectly reasonable and I think legitimate, we may well be cosmically important going forward. And I suppose you could say in some version of the multiverse, it is definitely so that we will be. But that's another discussion, another question. At this moment, right now, any action I take is unlikely to have significance even beyond the confines of this day and this local space. Its effects will wash out almost certainly. The butterfly effect notwithstanding, it's very unlikely that anything I do will cause a hurricane next year in any way that could possibly be predicted by me in any case. And so therefore it may as well be utterly unpredictable and unconnected in a practical sense. Then we can say, okay, then why do I think this is important? Because it's important to me, because it's important to people I care about, because it's important to people who I don't know and so can't care about in the more personal sense, but whom I care about in principle. My desire not to cause suffering beyond what they can't avoid to innocent people anywhere, if I can help it. That is important because I know that they are like me. The evidence is clear that we all have much, 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 much more in common, even with every other form of life, let alone just with every other human being, than every other type of matter in the cosmos. We know with very good evidence that other people can feel pain like I can feel pain. They can be depressed like I can be depressed. They can be heartbroken. They can be sad. They can feel despair. It hurts them to lose the things that they love. It hurts them to smack their knee on the underside of a desk. And that's all we really need. We don't have to make it cosmically important. We don't have to make it a matter of tremendous principle. Our meaning can be parochial. And by keeping our meaning parochial, we can avoid getting into these cosmic level struggles that lead us to be willing to sacrifice half the lives on the earth to achieve some abstract goal. Anyway, that's been pretty meandering. But at least, I think that I've at least had some thoughts here. Anyone listening, if you have any thoughts, love to get your comments. love for this to be a dialogue or a dialectic, not just a diatribe. So, by all means, respond. If you catch me in logical errors, by all means, point them out. If you agree, hey, it's nice to hear that too. And maybe I'll do this more often.